Hey, this is the Daily Overpass. My name is Eric and I make apps. Now today let's ask the question, do easy languages have a bad reputation? So the other day, somebody gave me a video topic suggestion. They said, Eric, you should do a video called Android developers versus iOS developers, where you talk about which ones are better, Android developers or iPhone developers, like which ones are smarter, which ones are better, which ones are more efficient, etc. Right? And I thought that would be a really cool title for a video, but there's no way I would want to talk about that. First of all, regardless of what I said, I would end up alienating half of the audience. But in reality, I don't think the language matters all that much. I've seen really badly written Android code and really very smart, well-structured Android code. I've seen really bad iOS code, Objective-C, and being really bad, like it compiles, but not very well structured, and really smart, well-structured iPhone code. So it's like, in some ways, I think the language doesn't make that much of a difference, but a lot of times there's a bias towards the more complicated languages having better developers because the barrier to entry is not as low. I remember when I started as a software developer, it was in the VB, Visual Basic. So Visual Basic 5, Visual Basic 6, and then it was VB Script, VBA, ASP, Classic ASP. And because it was easy to learn, it was a very forgiving language, it was very easy to get up and running with it. There was a lot of people just coming into it. So a lot of developers would get to a certain level and they wouldn't advance. And so you saw a lot of spaghetti code, right? And you see it, I think, in a lot of languages. And because of that, it had a bad reputation. I can remember once going to this, I went to a Java course, and one of the people I went with, he said he was becoming a Java developer, and he was saying that, yeah, ASP is good for websites if you only have like 10 users or something like that, but if you need anything more than 10 concurrent users, you need like Java or PHP, or no, it was Perl at the time. And I remember thinking, the guy didn't know anything. 10 users, right? But he was biased because he had seen a lot of the bad JavaScript code out there, and he thought VB script, he thought ASP was just a bad language. It wasn't powerful enough. But the truth is, I had worked with developers who were using very complicated structures. They were using object-oriented programming in classic VB script, and working on huge systems that could scale really, really well. And it wasn't the language, it was the developer. It was the developer. Some developers grow and are always improving themselves, and some of them just don't. Some of them are entry level. The fact is, when I was a junior developer and I wrote the worst spaghetti code ever, I could still say I'm a VB developer, the same as the guy who was writing the super scalable code, right? It was like, and if somebody was basing their judgment on the language based on my code at the time, they would have had a bad opinion on it. And I think that's the same with if we were to compare Android and iPhone. I think Android developers, it's easier to get into it because you don't need a Mac, you don't need to get the iPhone, you don't need all that expensive equipment, which is ridiculous. But you get better as an Android developer the same way you do as an iPhone developer, especially when you work with other developers. I think if you start to really expand and improve your skills all the time, right? So, a few years ago, I started looking at Game Salad. We're doing a lot of like educational games at the time, and we're doing things in Corona, which was done in Lua, which is, I kind of like it, but so I was looking at Game Salad, which has a drag and drop interface, and it was something about having the drag and drop interface to create an application that it didn't like. I thought it seemed too easy, right? It was I had a bias towards the fact that I think it can't be powerful because it's easy to create. Right, the barrier to entry is too low, and if we create it on Game Salad, will we end up with a product as good as anybody else? Right, which is just the bias that I have as a software developer. So my question to you guys today is, do you think that's the case? First of all, hey, if you want to say which one do you think is better, Android developer or iPhone developer, go ahead and put it in the comments, right? Because I ain't going to answer that question. But do you think that if a language is too easy to learn, it has a bad reputation? Because in some ways, I think that's the case. Anyway, that's it for today. I'll talk to you guys again tomorrow.